All right, good evening. Welcome to the program. You're listening to the Soapbox here on 90.9, 104.1 WMPG, Southern Maine's community radio from the University of Southern Maine. My name is Eric Poulin. I'm your host. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. My guests in the studio tonight, you may have recently read an article in the Portland Press Herald about the situation happening at South Portland High School. There are a group of students who have given rise to a fair amount of controversy because they've added one simple phrase to the invitation to say the Pledge of Allegiance, and that phrase is, "if you would like to," giving people the option of whether or not they would like to say the pledge. So my guests here are Lily SanGiovanni, who is the senior class president. Welcome, Lily.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And Morrigan Turner, and you are one of the leaders of the Student Senate and also a student representative on the South Portland School Board. Is that right?
Yeah.
Welcome, Morrigan.
Thank you.
Gaby Ferrell also leads one of the leaders of the Student Senate and is on the South Portland School Board. Welcome, Gaby.
Thank you.
So, Lily, maybe you can sort of take us back to when this controversy arose. How did it begin at the end of last school year?
All right, so at the end of last school year, the class of 2014 had just graduated, and I was elected senior class president. And I've been class president all 4 years, and Gaby, Morgan, and I have been leaders as well. And we've always talked about, how the pledge has been done each day, and it's the senior class president's job to take over the announcements and to say the announcements, which includes the pledge. So basically, when it was my first day on the announcements, Gaby, Morgan, and I had done a lot of thinking and talking and planning, and we decided that, we looked up, and there's a Maine state law that requires schools to give students the opportunity to say the pledge. So with that being said, we took it upon ourselves to, we changed the way it was done, and I said, "Good morning, everyone. I'm Lily. I'm senior class president." And then I started by saying, "At this time, you may rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance if you'd like to." And I allotted about 15 seconds for the students to do it on their own. So it was a moment of silence, and it was the secretary who was right next to me. She kind of went wide-eyed, and she grabbed the mic and proceeded to say the pledge. So we got some. It was a big deal. We hadn't talked to anybody before we did it, but we felt, we kind of wanted to. We knew that we'd probably be shut down if that had happened. So our principal called us in, and he said, "Hey, I understand what you're trying to do. In order for you to do this, you need to go through a change model, which is kind of like, what's the problem you want to change? How are you going to do it? What do you think's going to happen from it?" So we went on summer break, and Gaby, Morgan, and I did a lot of planning, and we made a really great presentation to our leadership team, which is composed of the department heads in our school. Mm-hmm. And so we did that on September 11th, ironically, and it went really well. We were taken out of the meeting because our principal had met with us, and he's like, "I want to warn you, a lot of teachers are heated about this, and we're going to try to censor it, so we're going to have you present and get out." And so basically, after that, we had asked for a moment of silence, and for students to say it within their home base if they wanted to. And from there, a couple months went by, and we had kind of heard that, nothing had really happened. No one really specifically told us.
This is the beginning of this school year now?
Yes, sorry, okay. Yeah, yep.
And at this point, are you still saying the pledge? You're still leading the pledge every morning, or are you doing the moment of silence?
I started off the school year. They asked that, in the meantime, to keep it the way it was. So I decided to continue to say the pledge the way it had been said. Mm-hmm. And so, no one had really said anything. And after our winter break in the end of December, we came back, and that's when I added the phrase, "if you'd like to." And then
you're leading at this point, but it's So you said if you'd like to, but you still led the pledge after you said that, right? So you were still speaking the
Right.
pledge, and you just gave the option
Right.
to other students.
So yeah, and in January I would say, "Good morning, everyone. At this time, would you please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd like to?" And then
Okay.
proceeded to say the pledge over the intercom. And then so I'd been doing this for probably about 3 weeks, and there was nothing. Students had come up to me actually and said, "Hey, Lily, like I heard you added this little phrase. I think it's really cool. Like it's awesome." But our principal, Mr. Karen, hadn't said anything. No one had talked to me, so I was like, "All right."
Okay, before
yeah.
we get that far, I kind of want to jump back a little bit. And Morrigan, maybe you can give me a sense of why did you guys decide that this was necessary? Were students feeling pressured into saying the pledge? Is this something that had been occurring?
Yeah, I know for all three of us, we had all had some sort of encounter where we felt uncomfortable for not saying the pledge, and a lot of our friends had talked to us about the issue. And that's when we started planning it. And then
What was the consensus among your friends who they also felt uncomfortable?
yeah, like one of our friends had we say the pledge during home base, which is like homeroom in between first and second block in the morning. And her home base teacher was in the military, and one day she didn't stand up to say the pledge, and he took her out of home base and like talked to her about like why it was important to him and that she should say it, and kind of threatened to give her a detention. Yeah, and like there was a lot of like dirty looks given to people. Like I got dirty looks if I didn't stand up sometimes. Yeah, so it was just like.
And so, Gaby, were there other students who you knew felt uncomfortable that this was sort of an issue to them, or was this more sort of a principled stand that you guys had chosen to make on your own?
I think we had been talking about and thinking about this issue because we all individually had been choosing not to say the pledge for a number of years and had had our own experiences. And in talking about it, it had we'd managed to have conversations with our other friends, branching out into the different people that we know, and other stories did come forward from our people who we are friends with who had stories of being in their home base and being feeling like coerced or shamed or just outright told that they had to stand or that they had to recite it.
Primarily by staff or students, or both?
Mostly by staff.
Okay. So now as you say, you guys had variously chosen not to say the pledge for some time. Can I ask why? Let's go back to you, Lily. What was behind your decision to stop saying the pledge?
Yeah, so through high school, I would always stand out of respect, but I chose not to put my hand over my heart or say it. I think personally, I know the under God reference makes me uncomfortable. Going more than that, I think it's more the fact that we were in kindergarten. You're taught like you're gonna stand, you're gonna rise, and you're gonna say this, and no one had ever stopped to tell you what it meant or asked you how you felt about it. There was never really ever a conversation or a lecture or anything regarding the pledge, and it was just something you did. And I think probably based on like the way I was raised and I just kind of questioned it, and so I chose not to.
Okay. You're listening to the Soapbox on WMPG, and my guests this evening are Lily, Morrigan, and Gaby from South Portland High School, and they were recently in the Press Herald about this controversy around not saying the Pledge of Allegiance, or more specifically, giving students the option to say it or not say it. And you are welcome to join the conversation here on the Soapbox. Call us up at 780-4909. So, Gaby, what do you think? What does it say about sort of the pledge and our country that we do sort of have students start to say this at a very young age before they're even really able to understand what the meaning of the words are?
This is a conversation that the three of us have had a lot of times. It's hard. It's such an interesting topic, and when you parse the pledge down to exactly what it is that you're saying, and it's a lot of people like to say that it's about the military, it's about respecting veterans, but the pledge does not at any point mention anything about that. I guess to your question, what does it mean about America? I think, especially in America, I've technically never lived in any other country, so I can't really speak to that, but there is a lot of pressure to be very patriotic and to always be expressing your love and respect and admiration for America, and it's like the word un-American gets thrown out around a lot. And so I think what it is, I mean, to me it feels like blind indoctrination. It's like we want as many people as possible to be fully committed and believe that the government is doing everything perfectly well, and that we should always support whatever is happening. And that's, for me, a reason why I choose not to say it. I don't think that we should be blindly following anything. I think we should always be questioning what's going on. I think that's the only way we can really move forward and make changes and be sure that the right thing is happening, is if we're questioning everything.
So, Morrigan, what's the harm? What would you say to the people who say, well, we owe a lot. We're extraordinarily privileged for living in this country. Why shouldn't students be coerced into expressing reverence and appreciation for the privileges that come with being a citizen of the United States of America?
Yeah, well, one of those privileges is that, like, we all get to go to school. And in school, I think one of the greatest things I've learned is to, like, always question and always, like, keep your mind open and, like, not just follow things blindly. So that's really, like, one of the reasons, like, this country is so great, is, like, we're given this opportunity to go to school and, like, our First Amendment right, like, freedom of speech. So when people say, like, oh, you should say it because, like, the troops fought for that right, they've also fought for the right for me to make the choice whether or not I want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
So
I also just the bringing I find it a little bit like they heard someone else say that the troops are specifically always and forever fighting for my specific right to have freedom of speech, and I don't know that I totally believe that. I mean, I feel like the man who, like, invented propaganda renamed our military the Department of Defense, which makes it sound like we are always under attack and someone is always trying to take away our free speech, which I don't personally see that threat.
It used to be
everywhere.
called the War Department too, and they decided that was a little bit aggressive.
Exactly, and and we've been told, maybe you should be thankful that you live here instead of Afghanistan, and I agree. I'm definitely glad that we live in a country that is free and that I am not being horrifyingly oppressed every day, but I also think that that's just something that everyone deserves and should expect to be given. It's not that I have been privileged to have this right, it's that other people are being denied the right to free speech and freedom of expression.
So, Lily, how do you, like, what is your relationship to the country, to the nation? Do you I mean, there's this whole flap, right, of Giuliani accuses Obama of not loving the country. Like, what does that even mean? But, like, are you glad, are you proud of the country? And, how does that relate to your feelings about saying the pledge or choosing not to say the pledge?
I mean, like Gabby has said, like, I was born here and I was given these rights, and, I'm glad that I'm, not constantly in a battle scene, or, that I live so safely. But I think, like, as we said, we've been given this right, and why not use it? So I think, yes, to be grateful for it, but also that doesn't mean that I'm not going to use the opportunity to use that right. And, maybe it's not exactly what, the American way, or, what America would hope you would want, but, they had to know that there's the quote, like, I'll disagree with what you have to say, but I'll fight to the death for your right to say it. And I think that is very true and important that, yes, we have this right, and you can exercise it in whatever way you choose.
Morgan, let me ask you this. Do you think it's possible to love this country and appreciate this country and even be proud of elements of the country and still choose not to say the pledge?
I think it's definitely possible. I think part of the pledge, like the liberty and justice for all, is like that's a great thing that we can be striving for, but I don't think we're there yet. So that's part of the reason that I don't say it, is that it's not true yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe if it was and hoping to eventually get there at the end of the Pledge of Allegiance, maybe that would change things. But I think there are still people being oppressed in this country, and there's still racism and ageism and sexism and everything still going on. So I think you can definitely still be proud of aspects of the country.
Mm-hmm.
We have public education for everyone, and that's an awesome thing, but that there are still other things that we shouldn't be so proud of.
Mm-hmm. Once again, you're listening to the Soapbox, and you're welcome to join the conversation. 780-4909. My guests are Lily, Morrigan, and Gaby from South Portland High School, and they've caught some controversy for insisting on exercising their right and informing other students of their rights to choose whether or not they want to say the pledge. Now, let's get to some of the backlash here. Rob Susie, owner of Port Harbor, Maine, posted a comment on Facebook, and I'm just going to quote him, let him speak for himself. He says, "So much for the all-American city. Standing for the Pledge of Allegiance is optional for students at South Portland High School. So let me get this straight. We just spent $47 million of taxpayer money on a Taj Mahal school renovation, and the kids, parenthetically now, of families that probably don't have to pay taxes to begin with, can't be forced to stand for 30 freaking seconds to honor the symbol of the country they live in and off. Are you kidding me?" This was liked by a good number of people, shared 11 times, and it invited 40 comments. There are some assumptions made in that post, so hopefully you don't take this the wrong way. Where are you guys from? Where are your families from?
I was born in Portland, Maine, and my parents were born in Illinois and Buffalo, New York.
Not that this should matter, but I want to get it out there just to call Rob out on his assumptions here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I was born here in Portland. My mom's from Wisconsin, and my dad's from Boston.
Okay.
I was born here in Portland, and my mom was actually born in Washington State, and my dad was born in Virginia.
Okay. So Americans through and through.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Well, I just one caveat I have to the accusations that it's immigrants that are doing this, and then the subsequent just blatant attacking of immigrants is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
But as we say, oh, well, I mean, we're white girls, don't worry, we're not immigrants. It's I want it to not seem like we are saying that if immigrants were doing
Mm-hmm.
it, they would be doing a bad thing,
Mm-hmm.
because what we're doing is not a bad thing.
Right.
But it is still weird to assume, and also then to just be mean and hurtful.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. We do have a caller on the line. Ed is calling in from Seattle. Ed, you're on the air.
Good evening, Eric. Good evening, guests. Very interesting conversation. I'm really happy to hear that you're stepping up and following the traditions of the youth of America. I did much the same as you folks are doing back when I was in high school in 70, 71. But a couple of interesting points I read in the Press Herald this morning, comments and such. It's amazing how short-sighted some of these folks can be when you go and exercise the freedom that they were fighting so much for.
Mm-hmm.
And it just real short-sighted that they don't actually give you the freedom that they were fighting for, the freedom to express what you want, and freedom to believe or not believe in a nation guided by a God. Now, which God is it? Is it your God? Is it my God?
Right, Ed, I think that's a great point. And a lot of people say it's disrespectful to sort of the fundamental values of the country to not stand up and say the pledge. And to me, it is reprehensible and even more disrespectful. Now, I'm going to editorialize here a little bit, but it's just as reprehensible, way more reprehensible, to force someone to remove them, their freedoms from them, and force them to do something against their will. That is not freedom, and that is not the fundamental value that we're supposedly founded upon.
Well, one of the bigger points that one of you guys brought up is they've been indoctrinated to do it from the very, very earliest of ages. When you first go to, I don't know if they do it in preschool, but definitely in grade school, you have to stand up and pledge allegiance to the flag. That's that's your duty to be in this classroom, and you do it, for 7 or 8 years, and then what am I pledging? Allegiance? Exactly. What do the words mean? And I was thinking about the 4 little words you added in the morning after inviting the school to join you, and I'm thinking about the 4 little words after liberty and justice for all who can afford it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your call, Ed. Really appreciate it.
Okay, great show. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we get to the end of the show, we're rapidly running out of time, but and I'm not sure how comfortable you guys will be going here, but I kind of want to call the principal out a little bit, Ryan Caron, and kind of hear from you guys how supportive he's been or not supportive he's been, because my understanding is, Lily, he gave you an ultimatum, right? He said you either drop the phrase if you'd like to, or someone else is going to lead the pledge. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, when he said that to me, I took it more as, he was asking, like, if I was comfortable with it, if you don't feel comfortable, we can find someone else to do it. I don't know.
That sounds a little bit...
Yeah. No, but Mr. Caron has been very supportive through this whole thing. Yeah, he's behind us, and he just wants to make sure that, we're going through the protocol, and that we, we're just being clear with what we want. And
Right, and that's in his job description. He has to follow the change process. He has to make sure that he's doing everything by the book, just so that people can call him out for not supporting us, but people can also call him out for supporting us too much and letting us get around certain things. And I'd say the reason that we didn't come to him when we made the try to make the change in the first place, and then our subsequent change, the reason that we didn't go to him is because we didn't want him to have to subvert the protocol, and we pretty much knew that if we didn't just make a stand, then a conversation wasn't going to get started, and it was just going to be squashed to begin with.
Right.
And he would have had to tell us that we couldn't have done it. And then if we had tried to present to the leadership team, there wouldn't have been the school and community-wide conversation to kind of back us up about how this is an important issue. And so in fairness, we went around him kind of on purpose, and he has been, he could have been way more angry at us, and really he kind of understood where we were coming from, and has been really supportive of us as students and as student leaders trying to make a change.
yeah.
So it was sort of, on your part, it was sort of a conscious act of civil disobedience to a certain extent.
Yeah.
A slight.
Yeah, we definitely had the conversation. Should we talk to him first? Should we just do it? And it came to, we should just do it. Otherwise, it's going to get squashed.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen.
And I think we're happy with our decision because
Yeah.
It certainly has started a conversation.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So, Morrigan, what are your next steps? Do you guys have a sense of... So right now, Lily, you're still saying the pledge. You've dropped the phrase. Okay. So what's your next move?
Yeah, so we will be presenting at the next leadership team meeting, which is March 19th. And yeah, we're kind of now we originally proposed having the moment of silence where people could choose to stand or stay seated. but now we're just going to be pushing for those 4 little words at the end, and we're going to get more. One of the things that Mr. Karen told us was one of the problems was that the teachers wanted more student, like, see more student harm, I guess, had been done by the way it has been being said. So we're going to, like, get our friends to say how they've been affected and stuff like that.
That seems like sort of a backward process to me.
Yeah.
We want to find out how negative the impacts of people's rights being impinged.
I think
Right, and also just like the fact that the 3 of us aren't enough. It's like, at one point,
Yeah.
do we have
Yeah.
enough people that it's a big enough issue?
Right.
You know?
You either have the right to have the option or you don't. It shouldn't really matter how many people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Gabby, we just have a few minutes, and I kind of want to ask you to sort of like put yourself in the position of some of the people who feel very strongly about it. What is their point? What is their perspective? What are they so upset about?
It's a really good question. It's a question I've been trying to answer for myself and really figure out. I read almost all of the comments on the Press Herald article, which was a lot, and a lot of them were just expletives and mean things. But obviously people do have a lot of really strong feelings about this on both sides. And I think I really do. I don't feel what they feel, so I can't really understand it, but I can intellectually understand where they're coming from in that they really support America. The flag means a lot to them. They do want to pledge their allegiance. They do want to promise their unwavering loyalty, and they find it upsetting that other people don't. And it's just hard for them to reconcile that some people maybe aren't proud of everything America has done and everything America will do.
I think that's a good answer. And so I guess my question for anyone who wants to take it is, given that, and people so often in this country vilify anyone who disagrees with them. And it's like, well, but they might actually be coming from a genuine place, even when you disagree with them. So understanding that it's that they really love the country and they feel a certain sense of devotion and responsibility and obligation to it. What is the argument you might be able to make that could puncture that bubble, that could kind of get through to them and help them understand that this isn't, you're not trying to tear down the country by saying, if you'd like to? Like, is there an argument that you think you could make that connects with people?
The thing that we've been saying repeatedly is that we're not trying to a lot of people think we're trying to get rid of the pledge completely, which is also against the law. So the point that we keep repeating is that we're not trying to take away your opportunity to say the pledge. We're trying to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to choose whether or not. And I know I've explained that to a couple of my friends who have been kind of shaky on the topic. And then after that, they've like kind of figured out that we aren't the enemy.
Like, we understand that there's one side who feels very passionately. They think that saying the pledge is their way of showing their country, their patriotism. But on the other side, there are people who don't feel that way, and we just want to make sure that both sides are being met in our school environment, and that everyone's
And are
feeling safe.
free
Yes,
to feel
exactly.
what they feel.
Respected.
Yes.
Well, I'm afraid that we are out of time, but I'm so glad that you guys could make it on the show. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and a lot of people are behind you, so keep it up. My guests, Lily SanGiovanni, Morrigan Turner, Gaby Ferrell, all seniors at South Portland High School. Thank you very much for being here on the Soapbox.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
And tune in next week. Jefferson Cowie will be on the show talking about his book, Staying Alive, The Last Days of the Working Class in the 1970s. And check us out online, facebook.com/The Soapbox Portland. You can find all previous episodes on our YouTube channel. Thank you to Azad for engineering, and stick around for Dog's Dinner with Pope. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
But oh my, he fought big Goliath, who lay down and died. Yes, David was small, but oh my. Have you ever heard about Jonah? He lay